guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. If you followed my channel, you know that I've done a couple of book reviews and the occasional book collection update. However, in this video, I'm going to discuss 5 books that I've read but haven't reviewed on this channel. And don't worry, they'll be spoiler free as always. Some of them have adaptations, so I might discuss those as well. But before we begin, I hope you all enjoyed your holidays and are looking forward to the new year. I'll be honest, 2022 was not a very good year for me, as I'm sure it wasn't for most people given what's been going on in the world recently. However, I'm still editing my novel and it's undergoing some major rewrites to make it better and fine-tune it, because I found a much better direction for it to go in. I can't wait to get that done, and I can't wait for everybody to read it. And that's kind of why I haven't been very active on YouTube in the last couple of weeks. So to everybody who's still around, thank you for your patience. I do have some more videos planned for the rest of the year. But anyway, let's get started. So the first book I'm going to be covering is Fahrenheit 451, written by Ray Bradbury. Fahrenheit 451 is set in a dystopian future where books are essentially illegal, and if they are found, they're to be burned. The main character is Guy Montag, a fireman whose job is to seek out and destroy any books that he finds in any households, or anywhere for that matter. Montag has a neighbor by the name of Clarice McClellan, a 16-year-old girl who not only forms a friendship with him, but disillusions him and convinces him to quit his job and go about preserving as many books as he can. It's such a classic piece of literary fiction, and despite its age, it's somewhat timeless, considering its core theme is censorship. And censorship is, let's be honest, nothing new. You know, in the 70s and 80s, religious conservatives were obsessed with censoring the heavy metal scene around that time, which is honestly quite ridiculous, being a metalhead myself. And now with the current landscape of political correctness, free speech is being censored everywhere. Except this time the roles are reversed because it's mostly conservatives who are being censored. So I guess censorship has come full circle, has it not? Plus, the book actually predicted a couple of things about the future, such as flat screen TVs and ATMs. And it's a quick read, you know, it's like 250 pages more or less depending on your copy. And I don't have a single complaint with it. In fact, it's in my top 3 favorite books of all time, that being To Kill a Mockingbird, Fahrenheit 451, and of course The Alchemist, which I do have a review for on this channel. So yeah, it's one of the best books I've ever read, its themes are timeless, and I'm gonna give it a 10 out of 10. The book also spawned 2 adaptations, the first of which was released in the 60s, and it was pretty faithful for the most part, although one aspect that I wished had made it into the movie was the robotic hounds. These are essentially futuristic police dogs, and they work alongside the firemen when searching for books. Instead of that, we got flying firemen, which is cool, although the visual effects are pretty dated now. And while the casting was spot on for the most part, the decision to have the same actress play Clarice and Montag's wife had always seemed weird to me. I still enjoyed it though, and it will probably always be the best adaptation of the book. I'll give it a 9 out of 10. Then there's the 2018 remake, which is essentially an HBO made-for-TV movie. It starred Michael B. Jordan, Michael Shannon, Sofia Boutella, and Lily Singh for some reason, and it attempted to have its own unique take on the story. Did it succeed? Not really. It was okay, I don't hate it or anything. It's just a bit misguided in some areas. I will say I do like the visuals and the cinematography and stuff like that. For artistic reasons, virtually every scene is shot at night, which I thought was effective because it suits the tone of the movie, and there's really only one scene set during the day. If you've read the book, you can probably guess which one it is. Its depiction of the future had like a Blade Runner vibe to it, so if you liked Blade Runner, you'll like that about this movie. I thought the actors did the best they could with the material given to them, However, the pacing felt uneven because the first half felt kinda slow and then the second half felt rushed, especially the climax. This was yet another opportunity to adapt the robotic hounds from the book, and they didn't bother to do it here either. The world building is flawed, given that physical books aren't the only books the firemen have to worry about. There's audiobooks and ebooks and illegal downloads and stuff like that. And about halfway through, they introduce a MacGuffin that's integral to the plot, but felt out of place considering it wasn't in the book. And it also tried to force in contemporary politics, with police brutality and stuff like that. So overall, wasn't really my cup of tea, but I guess if you've never read the book or if you've never seen the original adaptation from the 60s, you might enjoy this one. I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10. Next up is Dracula by Bram Stoker. Everybody knows Dracula. He's practically become a staple of pop culture at this point. His story has been adapted into numerous films, TV shows, and so on. But I'm not sure how many people are actually familiar with the source material, especially since it was written way back in the late 1800s. But it's still for sale, it's pretty cheap, you can get it anywhere, and there are many editions of it. Dracula tells the story of Jonathan Harker, a solicitor who is on a business trip to Transylvania. When he arrives, he stays over at Count Dracula's castle, not knowing that Dracula is in fact a vampire. The book is actually still worth reading despite its age, given how much things have changed over the last 100 years or so. Mainly because the majority of the adaptations out there were bound to have taken a few creative liberties with certain aspects. The book is best described as an epistolary novel, as the story is told through newspaper articles, telegrams, letters, and diary entries. The events of each chapter are told from a first-person perspective, and it often switches perspectives between each of the main characters. Aside from Dracula, one of the best characters in the book is Van Helsing, who many consider to be the OG vampire hunter. He is a Dutch doctor with a wealth of education, experience, and expertise, and he has since become somewhat of an archetype for every other vampire hunter in the history of fiction. The book deals with themes that are still relevant today, such as race, gender, and disease, since we've had the COVID-19 pandemic recently. And the best part about all of this is that Dracula is a very traditional, old-school vampire. Those are the vampires I grew up with. It's not like the vampires we've had over the past decade, the ones from Twilight and the Vampire Diaries. Those aren't real vampires to me. And that's partially why I'm excited for the upcoming movie adaptation of Salem's Lot, because that book also featured traditional vampires as well. The only gripe I have with Dracula is that it can be a bit of a slow burn from time to time. But nonetheless, it's still a classic. It holds up really well, and I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. The next book is Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. The Name of the Wind is the first book in a trilogy called The Kingkiller Chronicles. It was published in 2007, with a sequel being released 4 years later, titled The Wise Man's Fear. I haven't read that one yet, in fact, I don't even own a copy, to be honest. And the third and final book in the trilogy, The Doors of Stone, has been in development for the last 12 years as of this recording, and has yet to be published. So it's kind of in the same situation as George R.R. Martin's The Winds of Winter and A Dream of Spring, the last two Game of Thrones books. It centers on Kavoth, a magician who visits an inn and tells his story to Chronicler, a traveling scribe, about how he became the most notorious sorcerer in all of Temerant, the setting for the story. Now, as far as fantasy literature is concerned, The Name of the Wind is held in high regard due to its unconventional approach. Some consider it to be overrated, and I can understand why. I mean, I don't think it's a perfect book by any means, but I still think for the most part it lived up to the hype. This isn't a traditional fantasy story where a young farm boy becomes a hero of sorts. We've seen that one too many times now. And this first book focuses on the beginning of the story, who Kavoth was, where he came from, and what he had to leave behind in order to become the sorcerer he is today. And I really appreciated its story within a story approach, since we do have chapters taking place in the present at the inn, with all of the discussions between Kavoth and Chronicler, as well as some of the other side characters at the inn. Kavoth is a very relatable fantasy protagonist. Given that this book focuses largely on his teen years, he has to develop a sense of independence as he gets older. And given that most of the book takes place at a magic university, he has this desire for nothing more than recognition. Also, Patrick Rothfuss's prose is very accessible, yet very elegant and poetic, and not a single word is wasted. So much so that even if you don't enjoy the book, you'll enjoy the writing. And even the choice of themes really suited the book, such as prejudice, individualism, being changed by surroundings, social class, religion, and so on. I will admit that considering this is just the beginning of the story, at over 600 pages, it definitely dragged every once in a while, and some of the side characters are a bit underdeveloped. But other than that, I found this to be a very unique experience, and I would highly recommend it to you, especially if you're a bit fatigued by the fantasy genre. So I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. So the last two books I'm going to be covering are in fact Stephen King books. The first of which is Later. Later is one of Stephen King's more recent outings, specifically 2021. It tells the story of Jamie, a young boy who can see dead people and communicate with them. And there's a lot of interesting ideas in the book that go hand in hand with this concept, such as a dead author who died before completing the final book in a popular series of his, which is significant because Jamie's mother is a literary agent. And there's a plot involving a serial bomber by the name of Thumper. The story is told from the perspective of Jamie, and the writing style matures throughout the book as he gets older over the years. There's a lot of appropriate themes spread throughout the book, such as innocence versus evil, desperation, financial ruin, sickness, and trauma. Plus, the book is actually connected to one of Stephen King's other works, which I'm not going to mention because that's kind of a spoiler, so if you've read it, you probably know which one it is. And it had a very emotional ending to it, so much so that when it was all said and done, I kind of wanted it to keep going, considering it's only around 250 pages or so. And the title, Later, will make so much more sense once you get to the end. And honestly, I don't have any complaints with Later. It's one of my all-time favorite Stephen King books, probably always will be, and I'm gonna give it a 10 out of 10. And the last book to cover in this video is Billy Summers, the other Stephen King book released in 2021. It centers on the titular character, Billy Summers, a professional assassin who comes out of retirement to perform one last job. However, things don't quite go according to plan this time around. This isn't one of my absolute favorite King books, but I would still highly recommend it because it really is worth your time. So Billy Summers is a great protagonist. He's the type of assassin who will only kill people that are truly evil. And prior to all of this, he actually fought in the Iraq War where he was a sniper. In fact, considering his line of work, his cover story in this scenario is that he's an author working on a book based on his experiences in the war itself. And entire chapters are dedicated to some of the pages in that book. So this book, much like The Name of the Wind, does have somewhat of a story within a story element to it as well. Out of all the side characters, the most significant one is probably Alice Maxwell, a young woman that Billy finds and befriends, and she has a positive impact on him throughout the majority of the story. Now, I don't think she's meant to be confused with another character of the same name from the book Cell, which is also written by Stephen King, and I do have a review for it if you want to check it out. But there is a slight possibility that because Stephen King has his own multiverse, the Alex Maxwell in this particular book is an entirely different character who lives in an entirely different universe from the one in Cell. It would make sense, who knows? Plus, the book contains a little Easter egg referencing The Shining. It's nothing too major, but if you can spot it, you might recognize it. The central theme of Billy Summers is redemption, because even though Billy only goes about killing bad people, he has doubts regarding his final job. And fun fact, the book was originally set to take place in 2020, but thanks to COVID, Stephen King decided to change it to 2019. And there's even a line that references the pandemic as an event yet to come. And much like later, Billy Summers also ends on an emotional note, and an effective one that serviced the character of Billy Summers in the best way possible. I do have a few issues with the book, however. I feel that at nearly 500 pages long, depending on your copy, it definitely drags in places. And another thing is the somewhat disjointed structure of the book. You see, about halfway through, a major game-changing plot point occurs, and a bunch of side characters that I was fairly interested in just kind of disappear after that. Now, logically, it would make sense for this to happen, but I don't know, it feels like a cop-out on Stephen King's part to just abandon all those characters completely. But putting all of that aside, it's honestly a great read, and further proof that Stephen King has still got it after all these years. Plus, I'm also really excited for the upcoming TV miniseries adaptation. It's being produced by J.J. Abrams, and my pick for the role of Billy Summers would be Jake Gyllenhaal. I think he'd be perfect. So yeah, overall, another great book from Stephen King, so I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. So, that's pretty much the end of the video, guys. I do have a volume 2 in the works, and it will consist of 5 other books that I haven't reviewed on this channel. I'll definitely start working on that when I have time, because there's just so many other things I want to do on this channel, and aside from that, I really want to finish my own novel. As far as everything else I plan to cover on the channel this year, there's quite a bit, and I'm going to try and do as much as I can. For example, one thing I ended up putting off specifically in late 2021 was my retrospective on 24 starring Kiefer Sutherland. Well, the timing couldn't be any more perfect because around March or April, Kiefer Sutherland's new show, Rabbit Hole, is going to premiere on Paramount+, and as it airs week by week, I'll be reviewing 24 in its entirety before giving a review of Rabbit Hole. And there's some other stuff as well, such as retrospectives on Orphan Black, given that this year marks the 10th anniversary, although I am holding off on it until the upcoming spin-off, Orphan Black Echoes, premieres, and a retrospective for the 30th anniversary of The X-Files. I've been watching it recently. I just finished season 3 as of this recording, and I cannot wait to watch the rest of it. And I also might look at Sons of Anarchy and its spin-off, Mayans MC, given that the latter show is ending this year with its 5th and final season, assuming it does actually premiere this year. And as far as books are concerned, I plan on doing a series of videos about the Alex Cross books, but I'll only start with that around June when the new book comes out, Cross Down. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, guys. Please be sure to like the video, share it and subscribe, ring the bell. Take care, and I'll see you soon.